The galaxy had fallen silent. Across 10,000 worlds, the great civilizations that once ruled the stars now existed only as memories burned into dead stone and floating debris. The swarm had consumed everything in its path for 300 years, spreading like a plague of living shadow across the cosmos. No species had survived their hunger. No alliance had held against their numbers. The oldest empires, with technologies that could reshape planets and move suns, had crumbled like sandcastles against an endless tide. On the bridge of the ancient vessel, Admiral Wei stood before a holographic display showing the last known territories of intelligent life in the galaxy. Red zones marked controlled space. They covered nearly everything. Only a small blue dot remained, hidden in the outer spiral arm where stars grew thin and cold. Earth, the forgotten world, the primitive backwater that the greater civilizations had dismissed as unworthy of contact for 10,000 years. The Galactic Council had laughed when their ancestors first reached the stars with their crude fusion engines and radio waves. They called humans short-lived, violent, and barely evolved. They refused them membership in galactic society. They placed warnings around human space, telling other species to avoid the dangerous primitives who still fought wars amongst themselves. Now those same council members were dead. Their beautiful crystal cities were rubble. Their advanced fleets were twisted metal drifting through empty space, and humanity, ignored and forgotten, had survived. Wei turned to face her crew. 300 humans from every nation on Earth, each one a volunteer who had chosen this mission, knowing they would likely never return home. Behind them, through reinforced windows, floated the last hope of the galaxy. 200 colony ships carrying 6 million souls in cryogenic sleep, the final remnants of 17 different species who had fled to humanity for protection. The irony was not lost on anyone. The species that had rejected humans now huddled behind human shields, protected by human weapons, guided by human hands through the endless dark between galaxies. Doctor, the ship's chief scientist, approached the admiral with his data tablet. His dark face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes still held a spark of determination that Wei had come to rely upon during the 5 years of their journey. "The fleet has found us," he said quietly. "Long-range sensors show approximately 50,000 ships entering the void behind us. They will reach our position in 72 hours." Wei absorbed this information without visible reaction. She had expected this moment. They all had. The void between galaxies was vast beyond human imagination, a desert of nothing stretching millions of light years. They had hoped the swarm would not follow them into such emptiness. They had hoped wrong. "How many combat-capable ships do we have?" she asked. 47 human warships, 12 converted alien vessels with human crews. The colony ships have no weapons. 59 ships against 50,000. The mathematics were clear. This was extinction mathematics. This was the end of everything. But Wei smiled. It was a small smile, tired but genuine. She had grown up in Shanghai, in the shadow of buildings that had been rebuilt 3 times after 3 different disasters. Her grandmother had survived the floods. Her mother had survived the plague. Her people had a saying that had been passed down through generations of struggle: when there is no path forward, humans make one. She activated the ship-wide communication system. Her voice reached every human ear across the fleet, waking some from sleep, interrupting others at their stations, calling all of them to attention. "This is Admiral Wei. The enemy has found us. Their numbers are beyond counting. Every logical calculation says we cannot win this fight. Every reasonable person would say we should accept our fate and die quietly in the dark." She paused, letting her words settle. "But we are not reasonable. We never have been. Our ancestors crossed oceans on wooden boats. They walked across frozen continents. They climbed mountains because the mountains were there. They cured diseases that should have ended our species 10 times over. They split the atom, touched the moon and reached the stars with nothing but their stubborn refusal to accept that anything was impossible. Around the fleet, humans stopped what they were doing. Engineers set down their tools. Pilots gripped their controls. Soldiers checked their weapons. And in the colony ships, the sleeping millions dreamed of a future they might never see. The galaxy called us primitive. They said we were too violent, too short-lived, too stupid to matter. They refused to teach us their technologies. They refused to share their knowledge. So we learned on our own. We built our own ships. We created our own weapons. We made our own path through the stars just as we always have. In the engineering bay, a young woman named Sarah listened while calibrating this main cannon. It was a weapon of human design, built from principles that alien scientists had declared impossible. The aliens had said that energy weapons could not be focused beyond certain limits. Human engineers had asked, why not, and then spent 20 years proving them wrong. They have never faced humanity in battle, Wei continued. They consumed species that had grown soft with thousands of years of peace. They overwhelmed civilizations that had forgotten how to fight. But fighting is in our blood. War is in our history. Not because we love it, but because we have never had the luxury of forgetting how to survive. Commander James stood in the tactical center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching enemy fleet. He had served in 3 wars before joining the space program, had lost friends in conflicts on Earth, had seen the worst of human violence. He had also seen the best of human courage. He knew which one would matter today. In 72 hours we will engage the enemy, Wei said. We will fight with everything we have. We will use every weapon, every trick, every desperate strategy that human creativity can devise. And if we must die, we will die standing, facing the darkness, making it pay for every inch of space it takes from us. The alien refugees in their frozen sleep could not hear her words, but the human crews who had sworn to protect them heard. And something ancient stirred in their hearts, something that had carried their species through ice ages and plagues, through wars and disasters, through every nightmare that nature and circumstance could throw at them. Over the next 3 days, the human fleet prepared for battle. Engineers worked without sleep, pushing systems beyond their designed limits. Pilots ran simulation after simulation, memorizing attack patterns and escape routes. Scientists calculated trajectories and energy outputs, searching for any advantage in the mathematics of destruction. Doctor led a team that made a crucial discovery. The ships, they found, relied on a shared consciousness to coordinate their attacks. They had never faced an enemy that used individual initiative and unpredictable tactics. Their advantage had always been their numbers and their unity. Against human chaos, against human creativity, against human unpredictability, they would face something entirely new. Wei approved a battle plan that no alien tactician would have considered. It violated every principle of rational warfare. It relied on human pilots making independent decisions, adapting to circumstances in real time, acting without orders when necessary. It was messy, uncoordinated by galactic standards, and completely impossible to predict. When the fleet arrived, they expected to find a terrified enemy fleeing further into the void. Instead, they found 59 human ships arranged in a pattern that made no tactical sense, broadcasting music on all frequencies. The song was an old one from Earth, a piece of defiant melody that had been sung by soldiers and rebels for centuries. The swarm had no concept of music. They had no understanding of symbolism or morale. They simply saw enemies and moved to consume them. The battle began. Human ships moved in ways they had never seen. They broke formation, reformed, split apart, and came together in patterns that seemed random but somehow always placed them where the enemy did not expect. Pilots made decisions in heartbeats, following instincts honed by millions of years of evolution as pursuit predators. Sarah fired this main cannon again and again. each shot precisely calculated to hit multiple targets as ships clustered together. Commander coordinated attacks through shouted orders and hand signals when communications failed, trusting his people to understand his intent without needing explanation. They fell by the thousands, but more came, always more. Ships exploded, crews died. The human fleet was cut in half, then in half again. But they did not break. They did not flee. They fought with a fury that the swarm had never encountered in 300 years of conquest. And then, as the battle reached its darkest hour, something unexpected happened. The alien refugees began to wake. Not all of them, but some. A species known for their psychic abilities had somehow sensed the battle in their dreams. They linked their minds together, reaching out across the void, touching the consciousness of the collective. They did not attack, they showed. They showed the swarm what humanity was. They showed memories of human history, the endless struggle against impossible odds. They showed humans surviving ice ages and asteroid impacts, building civilizations from nothing, recovering from disasters that should have ended their story 100 times over. They hesitated. For the first time in their existence, they felt something they had never experienced before. Not fear exactly, but recognition. They saw in humanity a force that was, in its own way, as relentless as themselves, a species that simply would not stay dead, no matter how many times the universe tried to kill them. The battle did not end with a grand victory. It ended with a withdrawal, the pulled back, not defeated but uncertain. They had never encountered uncertainty before. They needed to process, to reconsider, to adapt. And in that moment of hesitation, the human fleet pushed forward, not in attack but in flight. They accelerated into the void, putting more distance between themselves and the swarm, buying time, buying survival, buying a future. Admiral Wei stood on her damaged bridge, surrounded by exhausted crew members, looking out at the stars of another galaxy growing slowly brighter ahead of them. They had lost 30 ships and thousands of lives. They had not won the war. But they had survived. They had made the darkness pay for every victory. And somewhere ahead, in a galaxy that had never reached, a new home waited. The ambassador, newly awakened, approached Wei with tears in his ancient eyes. "We were wrong about your species," he said. "All those years ago we were so wrong." Wei nodded. "Most people are at first, but we're used to proving ourselves." She turned back to the stars ahead. The journey would take generations. The challenges waiting for them were unknown, but humanity had faced the endless dark and refused to die. That was enough. That was always enough. And somewhere in the void behind them, they remembered what it felt like to face something that simply would not give up. For the first time in their ancient existence, they wondered if the universe contained things even they could not consume. Humanity had risen when all else was lost, as they always had, as they always would.